episode 14 of Fantasy Timeline. I'm Bill at Super Dupaflex. Uh, Welcoming Sonny from Big Knowledge Football, Dynasty Football Podcast. Welcome, Sonny.
Hey, thanks. Good to be
Yeah,
here.
glad. Happy for you to be here. Sonny's Twitter handle is at Big Knowledge FO1. His podcast, can't recommend it enough. Talks a lot about dynasty strategy and kind of the more of the psychology aspects of the game. Great listen, and honestly, if you're listening to us, you better be listening to Sonny. So Sonny, let's
Thanks, man. It's
let's
good to be here.
start.
Well, I guess I'm not a big Twitter guy, but I do have a Twitter handle and use it a little bit. So I know I don't have too much knowledge of the inner workings, but you've got this as far as the timeline is concerned. So I'm just happy to be here and not have to do all the talking.
Well, I'm happy for you to be here, and I wish you were doing more talking. So, all right. Well, the first thing we're gonna do is, talk about some news. Talk about, say as much as you want or as little. So
Sure.
the XFL started. Any interest?
Maybe not to watch. I think I'm curious what happens. I mean, like, have you been following it all?
No, I mean, I turned
No.
it on for a minute, like
Did you?
over the weekend, just like literally 5 minutes, and just to kind of
I read
see.
it. Yeah, I read my boy Antonio Callaway got signed by the Vipers, so that's something that kind of grabbed me. I was like, oh, Antonio Callaway. I will follow it, and I'm actually like I want it to succeed. I think it's one of those things where it's always good to have developmental leagues, and it's I don't think the NFL feels really threatened by it. So hopefully it'll succeed, and a lot of those guys that maybe need just a little more development will get that chance. So I miss so much programming already that I can't say I'm going to tune into it. But if it's on and I have nothing else to do, I'm not against watching it. But I doubt I'll get overly excited about the XFL.
Sure. Yeah, there's just some weird rules. That's the kind of thing that is intriguing me the most, just
Is
to see
it?
how that works.
What is it? I honestly, if it's like the old stuff, I don't remember. I knew they had the funny
No,
names.
it's not like
Oh,
that. It's more like it's kind of more cutting edge stuff that could potentially be seen in like, the NFL could actually like,
okay.
maybe transition to some of these. Like one of them's the kickoff, where when they kick the ball off, no one can move until the ball is caught. So it prevents these guys from being high speed, right? For the whole
So you
time,
get big returns then too, because the guy's
arguably.
got nobody coming down the field. Well, that's interesting. So all right, so interesting. Like they can just kind of switch it up and what? Ah, all right.
And there's no extra points. You have to go. So if you can take the ball at the 2 yard line and it's worth 1 point. You can take the ball at the 5 yard line and it's worth 2 points, or the 10 yard line for 3 points.
I like that. That's actually I like that.
So
Yeah,
it's
that's
some different
interesting.
things like that,
It's like a
and
5 point shot or something in basketball.
yeah, exactly. It's like the Rock and Jock basketball back in the day on MTV.
Okay.
I'm old, so yeah.
Yeah, no,
Um,
I know what you're saying. I'm old too.
and then I think the other and the play clock's like 25 seconds instead of 40.
Oh, that's good. Speed up the game too.
Mm.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Well,
that's
now
pretty much it.
I might tune in. Now you said that I probably more curious about the rules, but and I think it's more so just kind of following to see if some guys kind of like are all stars. Like Antonio Callaway, man. If they
Mm.
don't drug test in that league, he could be a wide
That's your
receiver one
boy.
for the Vipers. That's my guy.
Yes, he is.
Oh, that's funny.
All right. Recently, ESPN had a thing where they had all their beat reporters give bold predictions, and there was 4 of them that kind of caught my eye. The first one was Hooper signing with the Packers. There's the Panthers signed Bridgewater and then cut or trade Cam. The Cardinals cut ways with David Johnson, and then the Rams trade Gurley. Any of those intriguing or realistic or ridiculous?
It's kind of interesting. I don't know that any are really that intriguing. I think maybe Hooper to the Packers is the most maybe intriguing to me, only because I think that the Gurley trade is not very likely. It seems like the most unlikely, and I
Yep.
think the most likely is David Johnson getting cut. I think that's. I mean, it seems almost inevitable at this point. So
Right.
yeah, the Bridgewater thing, it's interesting. I've kind of wrote off Cam last year a little bit, but I don't know that Bridgewater is necessarily the best. It's like the best replacement for him. So yeah, no, nothing too intriguing to me. But Hooper to the Pack would be interesting. I would be curious what I guess they wouldn't feel that Sternberger is quite progressing enough, or they just a lot of teams are going to the two tight end kind of thing too. You never know what offense they have him on.
Right. All right. Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think the Gurley one's completely not going to happen just because of salary cap and his impact on it. And it's kind of the same situation with David Johnson. So, I mean, they're going to be taking a hit. Like, I think he actually cost them $2 million more a year if they cut or trade him.
That's David Johnson.
Yeah, David Johnson. So, because there's
but
so
he's
much.
What, 14 million or something, right?
Yeah, but it would cost them 16 million if they cut him because of his dead
many
cap.
more years? Then they would have to pay him next year if not. Is kind of the thing.
They could cut him next year, and then they could save some money then. So I mean, they might just want to get him off the team, so that there's no, issue, and they could save that roster spot. Who knows?
Yeah,
but
yeah.
It sounds like that's the kind of the one that's got some traction. So
it'd be interesting to see where he went and like what he'd be willing to take and kind of like how other teams actually or what interest they have in him. I mean, answer some questions for us because I have no clue on what's going on.
Yeah, and I mean he started out really well last year, and then so I don't know if him looking so bad at the end of the year was just an injury or he
didn't look fast. I think it's some of the back injury was kind of my take on it, just from like reading the tea leaves. But yeah, he didn't look fast. He did not look. And then you see guys, Kenyon Drake come in there, and the other kid, his backup, were outperforming him by a mile. So I think that's where the red flags come in, is just watching him compared to the other guys on the field. It's hard to make an argument for him, especially when just 2 years ago it was like unanimous. He was so special coming.
Right.
You didn't see that. You didn't see the explosion, him ever breaking off anything. Just like it was less than 3 yards of carry, whatever it was. It was bad for.
Yeah.
I don't have a lot of David Johnson, but I have a little David Johnson, and I couldn't even think about starting him. At some point, it was just like, yeah, okay, this is an on the shelf kind of guy, and then we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
If he can be saved.
I moved him in one of my leagues, and I thought I just gave him away, but I kind of feel a lot better about it now. I got like a 3rd round pick in Deontay Johnson.
Oh yeah.
So
Deontay Johnson, and he's growing. We were just talking about AJ Brown. It's just like some of these rookies that it's amazing how like they've just shot up. I love AJ Brown, and it just feels like, man, the value of him, and same with Deontay Johnson. The perceived value is very high, even though the production was good. It was, as a rookie, there's already that projection. So and I'm excited about him. I think I like it better in Washington. And we'll see with Juju.
Right. Yeah, he almost matched Juju, but I know Juju was hurt. So I mean,
and they have different roles. It just depends. I think a lot of times on the quarterback and the defense and all that. So Juju is getting a lot of extra targets, and with Antonio Brown, the situation's different. And I think Deontay Johnson has some of that what Antonio Brown has, though, the separation, and I think that's why they drafted him. They needed that dynamic.
Yep, that to kind of play that role.
Yeah.
All right. Next thing, Phillip Rivers and the Chargers, they officially broken ties. So I think I heard something about him or Tampa Bay being interested. Let's say they are. What do you think his role is? Do you think it's as a starter, and then if that's the case, is it what does Jameis do?
I can't see them signing Jameis and Phillip Rivers. Honestly, I think if that's the case, then they're moving on from Jameis, and they're probably trying to draft somebody to go like what's the Kurt Warner with the Giants and Eli Manning kind of thing, where it's like maybe you get a year or two from a vet who could kind of nurture. But I don't necessarily see Phillip Rivers as the nurturing type. He's a pretty competitive guy. I don't think he's gonna be like, yeah, come here, let me show you how to do my job. It's like, so I don't know. I don't hate the idea of it, but at the same time, to me, I don't know if that's really even an upgrade over Jameis. I think Phillip Rivers had 20 interceptions and 23 touchdowns. Jameis had 33 touchdowns and 30. It's like it's almost the same. To me, his launch pad release. It's just there's not that many launches left in that sucker, man. It's like.
Well, and what does that do to Mike Evans? You know what I mean? That would be my biggest concern, because I think Godwin would still be okay, but because he kind of play that Keenan role, but Mike Evans is the deep guy. It almost like I'd be worried about it because it's the same thing like Mike Williams. He kind of didn't get, as much as you'd hope for because Rivers just kind of this year he lost that, anything.
It to me it would just seem strange. I mean, the fact that like the ESPN report was saying like, oh, maybe Philip Rivers will go to a team that wants to win now, and it's like, you mean like the team that he's on right now, the San Diego Chargers, like the team that he's a legend for? That team, like, why did they just decide they want nothing to do with this guy? And he's their quarterback of all time. Like, he's the guy. It tells me like I'm curious to see what happens, but I'd be surprised if teams are falling all over themselves to make Philip Rivers anything other than like total stopgap quarterback. And with Tampa Bay or another team, I could see it happening, but it would not be with Jameis there. That would be their like sign of them moving on from Jameis to me. Which I don't know if you heard, Jameis got some LASIK surgery, so maybe that fixes his decision making too.
Yeah, I was joking with somebody on Twitter actually today about that. I'm like, oh, does that mean it's a buy low on him? And
He might just get a little enough boost to sell him right now. Honestly, like
that's exactly it.
I haven't been on Jameis for a while, so but he is a force. I had to end up playing a guy in the Super Bowl of a league that he got there because Jameis carried him in 2 straight games, and then luckily he kind of had laid an egg in the title game with those multiple interceptions. But he's a threat. I mean, he's a scary, but who knows when his riding that wave, when the wave ends, because it's kind of, I can't trust his decision making. I don't know that a team wants to trust his decision making. Maybe the LASIK is the difference. Maybe he can see. Maybe that was the whole problem.
I don't think that's the case, but that's why actually your response was the exact response that somebody, one of the guys I was talking to on Twitter, he's like, yeah, I don't think it's a buy low. I think it's somebody might be interested because they think the LASIK's going to fix all of his problems,
Gonna fix his decision making. They have LASIKs for decision making, then maybe I'll be interested, but yeah.
Yeah, I just joked that he probably back in the day thought he was grabbing his keys when he grabbed those crab legs.
Yeah, right.
So, but okay.
That's fine. No, like I said, I still see some path for Jameis, but it's really hard to buy into guys like that. Like with 30 interceptions, it's incredible.
Yeah, that's insane.
You can't win like that. And teams, coaches don't care about fantasy points like we like. I think that's what's weird is the fantasy community still like there are some people in the fantasy that just love Jameis because he carries so many points sometimes.
Mm.
But I don't think that the NFL can quite feel so warm about him. It's like at some point his run is going to be over soon.
Well, that's kind of the challenge that, you run into a fair amount. Like Bortles was a good fantasy quarterback when he played. But you knew that at some point that, it was just going to disappear because he's not a good quarterback. And
yeah, anyone who didn't get out on that train, it's just they were just waiting because the points were there though. You're right. It's like,
yeah. So it's like, depending on what you had into him, I get holding on to him, but at some point you knew it was going to happen, so you can't be mad when he disappears. And same thing, like that's kind of the Trubisky thing right now, I guess.
Yeah, I'm biased on Trubisky because I've been kind of in on him. I definitely we didn't, we had that opportunity to trade for him and we chose not to. We were just kind of early in the season, but people were trying. I have enough wherewithal to not, to see the limitations, but in this current fantasy, if he can keep a couple more seasons, just like Josh Allen, I mean, just the rushing ability alone makes him a viable asset in terms of fantasy. And then, yeah, at some point you may want to cut bait if you really see that he can't progress. But for now, I don't know that I'm going to sell him as if he's, going to lose his job like Trubisky. I mean, like Bortles. But he is kind of Mitch Bortles in a way.
Yep. So that was so everyone knows, Sonny and I actually share a team in the Superflex Army League with the guys from Superflex Super Show, Superflexology, who am I forgetting? Superflex Pod, all the Superflex people. Anyway, so this is my only co-owned team, so it's
my only I actually really enjoy it though.
Yeah, honestly. Yeah, it's interesting because you got a different mind. Normally I just pull triggers, so it's like nice to bounce it off somebody. It's different, it's a different dynamic.
I've been stubborn not to do this before. I had a good friend who we talked about it, and we're so different, and we just decided like, no. I think every time we just realized we're too selfish and want to do it ourselves. But it was perfect. This worked out, and it was really like better than I ever thought because you have to kind of just work as a team, and it becomes like there's an added dynamic to being a team where then it's not about just you pulling the trigger. Now it's like we get to the board meeting. It's like we have our own draft room in a way.
Right.
Get a look,
So,
just one more voice at least.
yep. Yes, indeed. So actually, I'm starting Superflex Army 2 this off season, and Sonny and I will not be sharing a team. So apparently, it's not that great. But yeah, so we'll be battling it out. But
That'd be fun. It'd be good. Yeah.
so I'm thinking about giving a spot away in that league to listeners of the pod. So we'll see if that happens. If I get any tweets or anything that anybody's interested, maybe we'll do something on this pod and go from there. But okay, just got to do my read here. This is the time of year where many of us are interested in joining more leagues. If you want to take over a team, check out Safe Leagues. They have orphan teams at all prices. On their site, you can go see all their information about a team and league before you make any decision. Go to safeleaguesfantasy.com/orphans and type in the promo code timeline. You'll get to be in a well-run league, and it helps us out too. So, yeah, give it a go if you're looking for an orphan team. Just check them out, and I think you get a discount by using the timeline code, and I think we get a kickback too. So you'll be supporting independent podcast. But
indie podcast.
Yeah, that's right. And so all right. So, every year we kind of all have our process as to what we do for the off season, like kind of what we are we looking at rookies? Do you actually review the rookies? Do you kind of rely on other people? That sort of thing.
I'm definitely not a purist. No peer. I take up as much input as I can get. But it's different this year. I definitely have not had as much time. So I think last year I was way ahead of where I am now. I was kind of head first in, way in the playoffs. I was already like totally just. I was excited. I had time because I wasn't overwhelmed with my work, and so I was able to really, just kind of put in all kinds of effort to learn about the players. Now I don't have so much in with the podcast. It's kind of forced me to make specific players my target, just to kind of piece by piece put out the podcast. So it's kind of forcing me to kind of piecemeal my time the same way. But it's interesting. It's kind of allowing me to keep a single-minded focus on one player at a time. But I haven't got through many players yet. That's the problem. And so it's weird because I listen to podcasts, and I just heard today on a podcast something like, oh, everyone's ready. This is the time for starting rookie drafts and time for starting new startups. And I'm like, no, it's not. I'm so far from ready to do any of that. I'm different on a different cycle than a lot of people. I kind of like the off season. I like to kind of have the down to let everything soak in. I think there's so much from the regular season that hasn't happened yet. That's just, like the coaching changes and the little things that we just haven't had a chance to all let everything settle out, that we don't know all the answers, and to start jumping right back in. I mean, I don't know. Some people, I guess, just want 1 million dynasty leagues, but I'm pretty much close to my max. So every time I look at it now, it's got to be timed right. And I'm glad that all my rookie drafts are later as well. It just gives me time to do the work.
So, like, when you're looking at rookies, like, what are you doing with that? Like, are you watching tape? Are you just kind of reviewing, like, I guess, what's your process with that?
I start with just highlights of the players that I don't know anything about. I'll start with highlights just to see something. Then I'll start typing in different. I'll look for. I pay for some different services that have some scouting and different things like that. So I'll oftentimes read my favorite ones. I try not to get too many voices, so I'll try to stick to the ones I like best. But then and then I'll go back and start watching some tape. And then a lot of my process, because I'm a dynasty player, I'm not trying to figure out how good of an NFL player is going to be, is based on just trying to figure out what the rest of the consensus value, how other people are valuing him, so I can kind of see whether I think he's going to be a good value or not, and kind of zig and zag based on a lot of the input I'm getting, and just kind of keep on. But yeah, I don't have an exact process. It's kind of I do a lot of digging. Like I talk about social psychology and stuff on my podcast, so I'm oftentimes just looking for edges. I read into things that maybe I shouldn't read into sometimes, but sometimes I feel like there's the common knowledge is common. There's so much work being done that everybody knows everything on the surface, and it's just kind of almost like part of the process is now having to figure out if you can kind of come up with something exterior. So that's a big part of my process at this point. It's just trying to find an edge because I feel like everybody already kind of knows the gist about everybody. It's just kind of figuring out where can I get an edge in Dynasty? Where can I get an edge to attack, my league mates and their weaknesses as opposed, and like what are their biases and what are they reading? I think that's a lot of times I listen to podcasts, a lot of times if I don't believe the guy is really a scout, then I'm not listening to him necessarily for his scouting. I'm listening to kind of see what kind of input he's putting out there because some of these guys have a lot of listeners. And so they're kind of, it's what I call, you talk about social proof leaders, people who influence other people. Well, if you know who their social proof leaders are, then you're going to find out pretty quickly who they value without even having to talk to them, without even to ask them questions. You already know a list of their favorite players if they're really committed to some of their favorite podcasters and such.
So I think that this is last year. I was way into it early, like how you were saying that you were, and I was getting let every way the wind blew. I'm like, oh, I'm gonna check this out. I'm gonna check this out. Okay, yeah, this affects it. This affects it, and it was almost just exhausting, like dealing with it that way. And so, like this year, I'm not really listening right now. I mean, I'm listening to podcasts, but I'm not like taking in every bit of information.
Yeah, no, it's a lot.
And so, like, I'm kind of, everybody's going to overreact to the combine.
Exactly right.
I feel like until free agency, that's when you can start to get a picture of things. And so that's kind of when I think I really start digging into like kind of where I want to place, rookies, where I think they're good. It's a good place for these guys to go, that sort of thing. You're going to hear, and then after free agency, it's going to be hilarious. Things are going to change. Like values of players are going to change for no reason because people need something to talk about. And it's incredible to me. So I'm trying to be,
people have nothing to do. So they just trade and then they start like trading to make trades.
Yep. Yeah, so I'm trying to be less affected by the which way the wind blows throughout the process. It's more like, okay, this is the guy I like. And then, like for me, the biggest driver is draft capital. Absolutely. And I think a lot
way more than combine, in my opinion. Yeah.
And there's huge inefficiencies in that because people either don't do their research, so they're using somebody's cheat sheet. And that cheat sheet is oftentimes done before the draft. For those drafts that are like right after the NFL draft, somebody's using a cheat sheet that has, like, for example, Hakeem Butler as the 13th player, but he's getting drafted in the 4th round. And, Kelvin Harmon's a 2nd round pick. And, there's all these guys that you're like, what in the heck's going on?
People had to eat some crow on that one.
And then Deontay Johnson, who's a 3rd round pick for a team who's known for picking their wide receivers, is going in like the 3rd, sometimes 4th round. And, those are the things that, like, those inefficiencies are, I think, where you can really attack with, like DJ Chark. He went 3rd round, but he was a 2nd round wide receiver.
There sometimes becomes like these general consensus between, it's like a group thing kind of thing where people all just decide, and then it gets hard to get away from it, and everyone just assumes, well, if everyone else thinks this, that it must be true, until that player proves everyone wrong, and then it's like, oh wow, you're right, So.
And that's a point with you with like the influencers and all that, essentially, like the people who are the ones that once they say something, it becomes like this, everybody's going to run with it. And so
yeah, I mean, it's so true. I mean, you could see it in like the reaction in your leagues. It's just funny how a certain themes, and that's why I think we were talking about AJ Brown. It's just funny to me. I love AJ Brown. We were all and we actually declined that trade with Keenan Allen and everything. But I still can't believe how the rise of AJ Brown has just gone so crazy, because it's just like he's become untouchable in a lot of people's eyes. And I love him, and I have a hard time trying to think, oh, well, I should trade him away, because I'm the kind of person, I draft players to keep them. I want good players, and when I get good players, I'm not looking to move them. I'm looking to now have my team built around him. But at the same time, it is bizarre because he is like shot to almost his peak value before we've seen nearly that, especially in that offense.
Right. And that's a concern. Like that's, for him in particular, like, what's his volume going to be? And I mean, he had a ton of breakaway.
Yeah.
He's incredible after the catch, no doubt. But like a new quarterback comes in, maybe like if they don't re-sign Tannehill, like it's a whole different dynamic. And what happens there? I mean, I love him. Like that's actually the only share I have of him is the one that you and I share.
Oh,
So
really?
like,
I think I have
yeah,
6. I have a lot. Deontay Johnson and AJ Brown were 2 that I was targeting. I should have targeted more because I targeted Paris Campbell more. And if I'd have just targeted AJ Brown instead of Paris Campbell a little more, I would have like a load. I'd have 10 or 12 shares. But I love AJ Brown and I do still believe in Paris Campbell as well. But yeah, that was one that I think the landing spot. It chased a lot of people away, but then the realization came, and I'm hoping for the same thing this year. I think that's why you watch the draft and everything. Is that there's got to be players that we love as players and that you do the process on before we see any input. And then they start getting bad feedback, and you even feel it yourself. Like I felt it with AJ Brown. Suddenly, I always found myself like, "Oh man, what a crappy landing spot." And then I told myself, like, "What are you talking about? This is exactly what you want—a crappy landing spot. Otherwise, he goes top 5, and you get him in very few leagues."
yep,
I got him in the second round in multiple leagues based on basically people just thinking he had no current value. He's not going to produce for him, and he still may not be a superstar, but it's just like it's hard for me to move on from a player that I think has all of. That's why people love him so much. He's got the physique to last. He's got the mindset of route running and everything. There's a lot to love about it. I mean, but it's amazing how the group thing just pushes him up. The
sure,
more it's like the stock market kind of quote that the more floor it has, like the better, the more people believe in it, the more value it becomes. But then you're kind of pushing the value way beyond where it could ever meet because it's just you pay for belief, you pay for confidence.
yeah, it's an inflated
Yeah,
value. So
confidence. You're gonna have to pay for it. If people have confidence in it, you're gonna pay for it. If people have
yep,
no confidence, that's when you get the deals. Is
a discount.
when
Yep.
people have low confidence. So
And that's,
that's
that AJ Brown thing is very similar to like Chubb when Chubb fell to the Browns and everybody
right.
was worried
Totally.
because he had Hyde in front of him, and that they had just signed Hyde, and who else was there? Duke
My
Johnson.
biggest thing with Chubb was honestly the pass catching, and I just thought with Duke Johnson there, I thought no way is even if he gets the starting job, he's just going to be the first 2 down, and in a way that's true. But I think when you get the premier 2 down backs who can catch some passes, it trumps, whether they get all 3 downs or not. It's kind of just enough the touchdowns and everything. But he didn't. I don't think that Chubb had the greatest season. They could have. There's a lot of room for growth for him when you look at if they
Sure.
change that offense, if they try to change that offense and give him the ball a lot more, look out because I don't think that he really did all that much. He might even be a buy because I sense that people didn't really get what they paid for out of Chubb.
Yep. So, Josh is in the
Yeah, I
chat.
saw this.
Co-host
I I
Josh.
am I am studying a couple players right now. I'm actually so short. Like I said, I haven't gotten much of my process. I did the running backs already, and I kind of got through that. And I'm about a little bit through my top 4 wide receivers, and so I'm kind of working on Laviska Shenault right now. But that's it. I mean, I don't have like I said, I literally by last year I was probably through 30 or 40 players that I had spent a lot of time on. And like you said, I don't want to get too much noise, so I'm trying to focus. I kind of dig on a player until I get a point where I feel like I have a real understanding of them. So if I can kind of like read some scouts, some guys I really think immediately out of the gate, I go, oh, okay, the consensus is this, and the scouts say this, and there's really not many questions I need to find out about. And then there's other guys where it's kind of like I might want to answer my questions about this, and how do I find that? And then maybe it takes just a little bit more watching a few more games, or maybe I'll just come to the terms that it'll just be based on how everyone else values him. That if he gets that I like him, okay, but if other people don't value him, then I might buy some shares. But if everyone else is liking him, then they probably like him more than I do. It's kind of I'm always just kind of trying to figure out because that's what's most important to me is the value of these players. Based on like there's a lot of players I like. The whole first round. I look at the whole first round and it's literally a 1 through 12. Everybody's getting a premier player, especially in like if you're talking superflex. I mean, there's 4 quarterbacks probably, and then all those other players. I just feel like every single spot in that first round, somebody's getting a talent that can be a premier starter for their team. And so, yeah, it's kind of a good time to to have those assets personally. That's how I'm looking at it. And so I get excited. This is where but one at a time. I got there's a lot of players that I get excited about the players that are fourth round prospects that maybe nobody else is going to be thinking about. That's kind of where it's like, I'm only going to get so many of these guys in the first round.
Yeah, that's funny that you say that because I've been doing so I do the rookie digest and I do the quarterbacks for that, and I've just
Right?
been
Yeah, I read
I've
that.
been peppering like film the last like month of these quarterbacks, and I started out with kind of like the worst, and now I'm getting up to I'm in the middle of Burrow right now, and then I only have Tua, and then I'm adding 5 guys that made the combine that I didn't have on my list. So, but like there's some guys like I actually get more excited about those guys that I'm like, oh, I can get this guy late. I mean,
Totally.
maybe not. Like last year my guy
Yeah.
was Minshew, and
Right.
you know,
Yeah,
th-
you had a lot of share. You were in on the Minshew. We ended up selling that piece, which I think was
yeah,
very
that was fine though.
that
I'm
was
down to 2
perfect.
shares of them, so
Yeah,
yeah, I
that was
sold
you
like
played
10
it
of them.
perfectly. That's you get him and then you sell him and then he becomes a backup.
Yep. So, but that's exactly it. People always focus on that top 12, but that's a pretty much a given. So why not focus
Yeah,
more on those
yeah,
guys behind, that you actually have the opportunity to acquire, and actually you could jump into a spot to get somebody that's it's not gonna, you're not gonna mortgage your future with. So
yeah. You can like really invest in a player. Like a lot of my signature players, the reason I got so many shares was because they were inexpensive, and it allowed me to really put my stamp and say I really believe in this guy, and I can go get him everywhere. If you really believe in Joe Burrow, then tough, good luck going and getting a lot of Joe Burrow. I love Joe Burrow. He's beautiful. It's like
man,
watching him play. He's beautiful.
yeah, like
Super Joe, man. But yeah, good luck going and building your teams around Joe Burrow. It's like my old Andrew
right,
Luck or you shoot for the stars. Good luck. But at the same time, I can deal with trying to find that guy that sneaks in and gets the starting job in a certain spot and trying to find. You're gonna miss a lot. But
yep,
that's just knowing you're gonna miss, and it's almost like knowing when to bail out. I think that's the super, like that's when you start to hone that skill of how long to hold on, or which guys seem to have more potential to hold on to than others, and reading all of that I think is really separates the successful dynasty players from the ones that kind of end up stuck with roster cloggers. And we all have it, but
agreed.
you know what I mean. There's definitely moments in time where you just kind of you take a plunge or get rid of a guy and everything, and you feel like this. I could regret this, or it's like it's a moment in time as you cut loose a guy or something. But you
Right.
got to keep moving. It's dynasty
Yep.
football. The team's got to keep moving forward, and sometimes I'll take those lumps, especially if I've lost faith in a guy. It's like I'll do my work to know if I really believe in him or not.
Well, and that's very similar to even to like what our whether it's age or whether it's lack of performance from young guys, and just knowing when to cut them. That's 100% the right time to do it, or to move them. Or if you see, it's so crazy to me now. Wide receivers like are old at 27. Like it's just
Yeah, that's a little crazy.
crazy. Like
But I mean, David Johnson and Le'Veon Bell, the running back. I think that it's caught a lot of people by surprise, and it may be a buy window on some of these 25, 26-year-old running backs because people have suddenly like it used to be 30-year-old running back, now it's like 27-year-old running back,
yeah,
and everybody's going, "Oh my God, it could be David Johnson." So that is interesting to me. But the wide receiver people shouldn't be. I was just looking at some wide receiver is 25 and thinking like, yeah, he's kind of old. And he's like, he's not. I mean, he's old because he just came out of the draft 2 years ago or a year ago, but he's not
right.
old.
Yeah,
It's
that's
yeah,
and that's the thing. Like it's even though you think if this whole dynasty game is a value game where you're buying and selling stocks and you just keep
right.
accumulating,
It's not.
value.
Yeah, it's like a
Like I
balance.
mean, to a point, and then
Right.
you, unless you're obviously if you're a contender, you're gonna overlook that to a point. But
I don't.
uh,
I'll be honest with you. I'm more of the investment type because I just feel like, especially when, like you said, we were talking earlier before the show about building depth, and at some point, I feel like I have enough depth that I don't feel like making my team top heavy. I would rather take my chances on winning now and keeping my future intact. That's a personal preference. But I guess there's a few occasions that I've taken that lead, but I almost always regret it. I think that's why my philosophy gets more and more to never going all in because you usually don't need every piece that you're going all in for.
sure. And that's the thing, right? If you're aware of that and you're aware that these values start dropping from wide receivers at 27, that even though you may think, well, they're just hitting their peak at that moment, which is
Right.
probably the case, then you still have to make those moves if you're all about the value. You still got to move these guys. Like you and I are talking, I have an offer for Hopkins right now. And
Right.
it's like, okay, the guy's offering me part of the package is Godwin, and there's a bunch of moving parts. But
Yeah, you should explain. I think it's a good trade to talk about.
okay. So I just got this offer, and I was thinking about essentially just getting a little younger. It's a team that um, there's a couple teams that are just better than the rest, and I'm always a playoff team, but my team's getting a little older. I had David Johnson. I moved him for Deontay Johnson and a third. Um, I have anyway. The trade here is these are my guys. It's a 14-team superflex. Tyrod Taylor, Austin Eckler, Melvin Gordon, and Hopkins for Mixon, Godwin, and Hilton. So I'd be getting two younger parts with 23-year-olds with Mixon and Godwin. Hopkins is what? He's going to be 27, I think. Gordon's 26. Eckler, I think, is 24, but he'll be 25. And then Tyrod, whatever there. So it's a pretty solid offer.
Yeah, and I think that's one of those examples of where you could, you can see both sides of it. And it really just depends on what side. I did think it was interesting that it seems almost like you're giving up fallers or guys who are kind of a lot of sell candidates with Hopkins and Melvin Gordon, and you're getting kind of buy candidates, guys that are hot names like Mixon and Godwin, and yet you're not really having to pay that premium of the quote, buy sell candidates. That's why I think it is a really good offer that the guy made you, and a good offer for you to, if you want to go younger. I
Yeah,
like it.
I'm probably going to accept it. I don't even know. Maybe what kind of trader are you? Are you a guy that's always like trying to get that last ounce out of somebody, or are you a guy who?
No. Because I have 21 teams and I'm limited time with the kids and the business and everything. I honestly will take losses sometimes just to get the players I want. But I do, and that's kind of like, you always have to look at your weaknesses. That might be one of my weaknesses, that I'm not willing to finagle sometimes. But I do, like I said, I know values, and I try to always, I'm always looking for somebody who's looking. My ears are always perked for somebody who's looking to get rid of somebody, that they're looking to sell off somebody. Sometimes they put them on their trading block, or they just kind of start sending out the signals that they're wanting to trade them. And there's somebody that I have interest in, and I just feel like when everybody does that, they're saying I'm willing to sell them at a discount, whether they say it or not. By putting them on the block, it means they want to sell them at their current value, but they're willing to take a little bit less. So that's where I would start knocking on their door and trying to push a little less. And then I guess I don't have the time. Unfortunately, I'm probably not the most effective trader because I just don't get out there and do it enough. I wish I had more time. I would be, better at it. On my podcast, I explain strategies of trading and all these different things, and I don't get to implement it. If I talk about it sometimes, like, my podcast, I wish I had more time to try some of this stuff. I wish I got more feedback from some of my listeners that, tried this stuff and let me know how it works, because, a lot of it is just in theory, or some of it's things I've just tried a few times and I don't know the success rate, and I don't know exactly where to go from there. And I don't have the time that I'm just sitting out. I have certain guys I try to get, and I usually I'm not like a trade person who just has to trade all the time. I usually build my teams with youth and with players, a lot of players that I become attached to in a way, for good or for bad. That I'm not just trying. I don't look at my teams and go, man, I want to get rid of a lot of these players. It's usually kind of, I'm just looking to add a little bit here, a little bit there, or if I have a major need, like losing a quarterback or losing a situational player that really is going to fill in a tight end or something that I can't. Other than that, yeah, I pretty much don't. I try not to overthink trading, and I don't. I'm not the guy who comes up with all kinds of different. I just don't have the time. I wish I did. It's funny because my podcast, you would think I was like Mr. Trade Guru, but I'm really not, because I don't. I build my teams in a different way, and like I said,
Sure.
I make some good trades. I just make sure I don't get hosed. That's a big part
Yep.
of it. I know, but I also know my own value. So a lot of times I'm willing to take a deal. It was like one of the deals I took last year in a quarterback premium league, is the guy had Kyler Murray taken in the first round, and I had to give up Fournette because AJ Brown fell all the way to 2.4 or 2.6 or something, and the guy had that pick. So I said, well, I'll give you Fournette for those two, and it was like I kind of knew that probably if you looked at the numbers, I was losing that trade. But there's just no way in my mind that was like, that is a great trade. I'm going to get freaking Kyler Murray and AJ Brown. I'm going to give up Fournette. And Fournette's, he's had a great season. I still love the trade for myself. And so
Sure.
that was one that I just feel like, I had to. Those are the ones I'm always reminding myself that just don't worry about the quote value. Worry about adding the right pieces, and it may or may not work out. You're going to have your misses. So
yep. Go get your guys. If you got to take a little bit of a hit, that's way better than being stuck with the guys that you don't necessarily want on your team anymore. Yeah. And that, I think that's what a lot of people get too caught up in winning a trade and less. So basically I'm the kind of guy that's going to be like, okay, I'm going to make about as good an offer as I feel like I need to for this trade. Right. And then like if a guy like wants to talk me to add a third or do something like that, okay. But I have so many people where I'm like, I think I'm coming in with like a pretty impressive offer. And then they're like, just blow the whole thing up and they want, change all these parts like to where the value ends up like adding like an extra first and second or something like that. And, those are the ones that I just end up like,
yeah,
somebody's got to win it and they got to win it big,
There's a lot of smart dynasty players out there, and there's a lot of people who don't, like you said, don't like losing a trade. So they can never, they have to like weigh it on their side to give themselves a buffer in case one of their pieces that they, get in the side doesn't work out. It's like they're already hedging their bet. But to me, I'm already kind of looking at it as, okay, I don't want to, there's time invested in this. We're playing 35, 50. I have a lot of $100 leagues. How much time of my time is this worth for me to constantly be hounding people to get a trade done when it's just $100 league of a year's worth of, it's like going out to the movie with the family or something. It's like, it's an entertainment thing. And I'm not going to spend my valuable time hounding. I will try, especially for key players, because there is something about looking at your dynasty team and having all these beautiful pieces. It's like, I tell my wife, I'm like an artist. I build beautiful dynasty teams. It's like I create these beautiful dynasty teams. I'm proud of them, and I take my time and I nurture them and I put little pieces in. But it's a slow art work, whatever. But it's also, it's just a game, and it's just there's only so much I'm going to put into it.
Sure.
Before I just go, okay, this is, I have children that I'm watching grow up, and I'm not going to, be staring at my pad all the time so I can make it, another deal or try to squeeze an extra 4th round pick out of somebody. It's like, I'll ask, sometimes, especially if I'm trying out different tactics for the podcast or for just my own experimentation, I'll do things. But if I really want to play out, the last thing I'm trying to do is finagle. And it's also, a lot of my leagues are established, and you just don't want to be that guy. At some point, I want to be somebody who's easy to work with, and I want people that are easy to work with. And we all can give a little bit here and there, and you just find that you have much better working relationships, and you're not, you find the people that are always trying to win trades, they're running out of trade partners in a way.
Yep, that's very true. So, as for trades, is there anybody you're looking to like add or sell right now at their, at basically what market value?
We talked about the Chargers players, Eckler and Keenan Allen are two guys that I would probably be selling. Keenan Allen, because I just think that he's getting to that age point where he doesn't have Phillip Rivers anymore. So now you have to figure out he's a timing receiver. He's all about timing routes and everything. So you have the guy you're timing it with, we don't even know who that's going to be. So there's definitely questions there. And then he's not getting younger. He's always, he's not built in the sense that I don't know where his future lies, but he still seems to be one of those guys that's hanging on to that top value. So I think this is the time to sell him. If he was kind of falling down further, then maybe he would be a hold for me. But I feel like he hasn't. There's a lot of people who still see the same Keenan Allen. And with Eckler, I've just been surprised to see him so far up some boards with as many questions about him. I think he's a great player too. And in the current NFL, he's kind of the modern day. But even if Gordon moves on, there's like, I don't understand why people are just assuming that like he's going to get that bell call. There's almost certainly going to add somebody else, and then he's going to be in another timeshare. So he's going in the 4th round of some startups I saw. I'm like, 4th round for Austin Eckler, going ahead of Melvin Gordon and stuff. Yeah, that's a sell for me. If I can get some of the wide receivers at that same point, definitely.
Yeah, that's something that like that point you made about adding another back. That's the same thing with like Josh Jacobs. They just re-signed, the Raiders re-signed Jalen Richard, and like on Twitter I saw so many people like going, "Oh man," like they re-signed Richard, and I'm like, Yeah, I get it. Jacobs owners want them to have 0 other running backs
Right.
on the
Right.
roster, but like let's be realistic here, like
Yeah.
they're going to be signing other backs. They
Totally.
need those backs.
They
These guys
gotta
get
have
hurt all
and
the time.
Richard is like the perfect receiving back. It's not
Yep.
there's no big back. That's why it's like Eckler. As much as I like Eckler, it's like Jalen Richard is the same player, and Tariq Cohen's a better version of the same profile player. Why are you going to move one all the way up into the 4th round? He's the outlier. He's the one, the sore thumb that's standing out. He's got to be the guy that you can't either you move on from him or you definitely if you're buying him at that cost. I don't get it. That's not.
Yeah, that's going to be a depreciating asset quickly.
Yeah, totally.
So, all right, let's get on to what we've seen on the timeline. There's a few that I thought were pretty interesting. The first one is from Sports Freak 13513 at Dynasty Trades 13. It's a 2 QB league, 0.5 PPR. Would you prefer Calvin Ridley or the 109?
Yeah, I saw that. I think that it was like 60% on Calvin Ridley.
Yep.
I think in a vacuum, I'd take Calvin Ridley. But I think actually, you know what? When I was mentioning that 25-year-old receiver, that was Calvin Ridley. So Calvin Ridley is 25 already, and it made me look at it, and I was thinking, okay, so there's a Henry Ruggs maybe falling here, super flex. Is it super flex?
It's a 2 QB.
2 QB. So it could even, yeah, I mean, you could have 4 quarterbacks gone there. It could be even a CD Lamb or, a Jerry Jeudy or Henry Ruggs. Yeah, like in a vacuum, it seems like the Ridley's the right play. But honestly, this is the kind of scenario that we were just talking about before the show where it's like you got a 60-40, then really what you have is opportunity to get the 1-9 plus. And so then what you need to do is go 1-9. And if I can, I told you about that trade with Andy Isabella and Hakeem Butler basically just being thrown on top and the whole reaction. Everybody just said like, oh, basically those are just throw-ins. So maybe that's what you do is you get the 1-9 and then a couple throw-ins of Andy Isabella or these disappointment guys on their roster, even a 3rd-round pick and an Andy Isabella or something. Then, okay, I'll take the 1-9 in that side, easily just because there's some more, unless it's, a small roster team.
Sure. And this is, obviously we only have so much context for this, but like, let's say that, it could be a super like QB hungry team, that they need to get a QB because it's 2 QB and they're willing to give up Ridley for the 1-9, and that's,
there's no guarantee that the
because
QB
they're hoping they might get a quarterback.
Because the 2 QB league, that makes it even more stressful to get top 4 quarterbacks are going to probably be in the 1st round there. I doubt honestly that quarterback will be there.
And that's not a trade I make until I know that somebody's that a player's available at that point. But you're not going to get him for that price then, I guess. So that's the argument there.
Well, you might. What I'm saying is, I would take if I have Ridley, I'll take the 1-9, even assuming I don't have the quarterback there. And if you can give me the 1-9 plus, because the 60% is favoring Ridley, that means most people are probably assuming Ridley is the play. And you could probably get more on top of that. Then it would probably have me leaning opposite of Ridley because, I value Ridley. I think he's, a great player and everything, but he does have Julio there for the current time. And he's not the profile that there's a limited upside to him. He's kind of a small, fragile guy. There's things about him that, if you're talking about comparing him to, I love Henry Ruggs. I'll be talking more about him in my podcast and stuff, but I have him on my Debbie league. So as I'm going through these early receivers, Henry Ruggs is one that I don't need to watch too much on. I've already kind of know enough about him, but yeah. So I have a feeling I'll be getting a lot of like 1-9s and stuff. Henry Ruggs will be a guy that I value him. I think teams are going to value him. I don't think he's just a fast guy. I think that's a foolish kind of assumption just because he's fast means it's all.
No, he's a good receiver for sure. He's more than just like he could be like a Deshaun Jackson kind of guy, like Deshaun's not
DeAndre Hopkins, but with speed. I mean, the way he plays he just jumps up and grabs the ball. He's not obviously doesn't have the route, but he's skinny and he's physical, which reminds me of DeAndre Hopkins. And then he has a really good deceleration. He stops on a dime. He's nuanced with his route running, and if he's fast as everyone says he is, he's like the fastest guy on the planet, frankly.
Sure.
I honestly didn't think it was that fast when I signed him as a Debbie player or whatever. It was not speed that attracted me to him. It was just that he was part of the whole Alabama machine. Right. And then it was like the more I heard him, I'm like, really? Is he that fast? Oh, he's like 4.2 fast, really? So yeah, I'm curious and I'm intrigued. I think that guy he's gonna be one of my darlings. I have a feeling. We'll see.
Yeah, you like those fast guys, though, don't you? Like I was actually talking to Ray Garvin about Ruggs a bit, and he was, I was like, who do you compare him to? Like a bigger Mecole, like, and he's like, yeah, that's not the worst comparison, but there's, but speaking of Mecole, like, you were the guy who got me on a Mecole, like, to start, like, at the pod. Nobody was even talking about Mecole Hardman before you were, like, from
And
what I
that's,
recall.
yeah, I tell you, that's why I do my process, and that's honestly why I don't like let other people tell me what I should be thinking, because if you listen to my podcast and you go back, I actually said, like, the tea leaves where people were saying he was going to be a 6th-round draft pick, and I said I believe he's going to be a 2nd or 3rd-round pick. I had read something somewhere, and I just saw this player and thought to myself, the current NFL, there are just not that many guys that do this. It blew. I was super disappointed when the Chiefs drafted him, because I was like, oh, I'm not going to get any shares now. I thought he
Right.
was the guy that I thought I was going to get in the 4th round and just be like, I didn't care what team he ended up on. I was like, I'm just going to get this guy, and believe me, he's going to develop. And then all of a sudden the Chiefs take him in the 2nd round, and it was like, oh crap. Now it's like spoiled my party. But that, to me, that's why I do this, is because of those gem ones. It's fun. That's what Tariq Cohen was the year before for me. Philip Lindsay. I've had a lot of my dynasty teams have been built on 3rd and 4th round picks that
Sure.
I put a lot of just kind of like got a lot of them for free, and now I have a lot of assets of guys who are valuable. Maybe not the cream of the crop players, but I didn't have to spend cream of the crop, and it supplements all of my other pieces that I was able to hit my pillars. The pillars of my team.
All right, so Dynasty all day at Dynasty VC23, 12-team PPR, Superflex, tight end premium, Godwin or Boyd and Andrews.
Yeah, I'm not a Boyd guy, so it's hard for me. I see the value in a premium tight end and getting Andrews and a good receiver for Chris Godwin. But there's no way I'm giving up Chris Godwin for Boyd and Andrews. It's not happening in my world. I love Godwin. I'm like,
I know you
Godwin's
do.
another one of these man crushes. You're not getting me to give up my shares of Chris Godwin. I drafted that guy because I thought he'd be really good, and now he's really good. Why would I give him up just because he's overvalued? It doesn't make sense
Sure.
to me. But no, I get it. Tyler Boyd is, to me, just not. He's like a poor man's Doug Baldwin, and I think that there's just too. Yes, Andrews could outscore both of them in some tight end premium leagues. That's a crazy thing.
So yeah, that's kind of where I was gonna go. Like Boyd, I think he's just kind of gets washed in with a lot of those wide receivers that are all kind of in that same tier. Like you could from like wide receiver 20 to 40, like all those guys are all kind of that 1,000 yards, 80
Yeah,
catches, 6
right.
touchdowns, whatever. Like you can get those guys all day, every day now because of the way the rules have changed.
Mm-hmm.
So like, just let's focus on Andrews. Like, is that a guy that you think, like, is he the like tight end 3 or 4 to you now?
I don't know about 3 or 4 because Baltimore had so many tight ends, and I still have hope for Miles Boykin and some of their receivers to get in the mix. So I don't know that it'll be so Mark Andrews heavy moving forward, but he's really good, and I have 0 shares, so it's really hard for me to like. I don't know whether I like. Do I buy in now? Am I come and just like try to take a little bit? No, I don't think I do, because I honestly think that like there's just enough doubt. But just a great player and a great weapon, and they use him especially in the end zone. Like if you have premium points on touchdowns or something a little bit more, then you have to really value him, because just in the red zone and stuff. He's a man. He's just up there
Yeah.
getting the ball a lot, and Lamar Jackson really relies on him a lot. I think it's the faith, the trust that he has in him over the other tight ends. But there's still 2 other tight ends and Boykin, and they run the ball a lot and
Yeah, and
everything.
who's to say that they're not going to add another
Right.
receiver,
Yeah.
more of a possession guy.
But he's been great. There's no, you can't
Yeah.
deny he's been great. Yeah.
Like, I mean, he's 23 too, and that's the big thing. Like in
That is.
Dynasty, like you get this tight end that's 23, like you can just sit on him. That's already like performed.
I mean,
Like
Kelsey took till I was like 25 or something.
yep,
And
Ertz was
yeah.
26. It's like Hooper this year, he's a younger one, 25. So like you
It's
get
interesting. Yeah, I mean, it's a good
like
argument.
Kittle, he didn't blow like he started
Yeah.
later in his career. Like he was like 24 or something when he was a rookie. So he's 26 now. So you got this guy who's 23. He's 3 years younger than Kittle.
And he could
And
outscore Chris Godwin because of the tight end premium scoring. That's the crazy thing. It's
yeah.
like he literally, because of the tight end scoring premium, he could by himself outscore Chris Godwin. It's a tricky thing. I am going to adjust in my process this year of really like trying to find a way to find cheap upside tight ends in some of these tight end premium leagues and loading up on a lot of us, even because we won our league was based on like Tyler
Yeah.
Higbee. It's like you can win leagues with Tyler Higbee, and
Right.
that's tight end premium. It's almost gone too far the other way in a way. It feels like it's just like if you get the right guy, because if they get 10 catches and 150 yards and 2 touchdowns,
Yeah, you
that's
won.
unstoppable numbers. That's
Yep.
that's like you can't receivers can't even match that unless it's Julio Jones on his best day or something. So
Yeah, to be honest, you look at our roster, you would be like, this is not a championship team. You know what I mean? Like, it's crazy. Like,
yeah. And
we have a
OJ
couple
Howard
good.
didn't even show up for us. I mean, we have a lot of people still that can show up. Paris Campbell. We have a lot of Deontay. We have room for growth here. We got very lucky.
Yes,
now
we
don't have to
did.
worry about it. We already got it out of the way.
Yep.
And now we can coast and keep
House
building that
money.
beautiful young team. Beautiful young championship team.
There you go. Go ahead.
That's it.
Oh, okay. I thought you wanted to gloat more. So,
that's
all right.
More than enough gloating.
All right. Last thing I have is FF Kyle, or FF _Kyle at Dynasty FF _Kyle M. Pending draft capital, I can confidently say that my guys in this rookie class are Cam Akers at RB and Brian Edwards at wide receiver. Let's hear yours. Do you have any?
Well, I told you I'm kind of early in the process, and I did mention Henry Ruggs. What I did, because I read this on the thing, I decided to take 2 guys that I'm kind of big on from my Devy leagues that I do know a little bit more.
Okay.
And I have a feeling that I will like these guys, that I will probably trying to be landing shares, but there's a lot of process to go, so I don't know. One is Lynn Bowden, the wide receiver / quarterback for Kentucky. Big fan of Lynn Bowden. I got him earlier this year or something, and then I watched him change from wide receiver to quarterback and watched him just carry that team. And it's interesting. I think that maybe because he's a player stuck between positions, I also am intrigued because I think people are not. He's not going to get drafted as high as he could have been, maybe because he didn't refine his receiving skills, and he's not. Like a lot of people are going to wonder whether like how he's going to develop. It's kind of like the Miko thing. A lot of people just wrote Miko off because he came out as an athlete and he didn't have a lot of experience as a wide receiver, and that's the assumption is, well, he can't be a good wide receiver. And it's like, well, yeah, there's less of a likelihood, but you have to look at the whole picture. And so I think with Lynn Bowden, he's just like one of those guys that he can cut on a dime. He's like a 5'10", 185 pounds, but he's one of the toughest football players I think I've ever seen. He played quarterback for Kentucky, and he ran for like 200 yards a game.
Wow.
They just built the whole offense around. They're like, you know what? Our quarterbacks aren't very good. You're our best weapon. Let's just move you from wide receiver to quarterback, and let's just let you do everything. And then he literally did it and took him to a bowl game and won the bowl game, punched the defensive lineman in the face an hour before the bowl game, and still was the MVP. I mean, the guy's like, he is a true. I just love him. He's like you watch him and you go, okay, he could be a great Scott. He could be a slot receiver. He could be an Antoine Randall L. In a time that Antoine Randall L. would actually be a lot better player, much more versatile user.
For sure.
I don't know where it's going to end up, but I love me some Lynn Bowden, and I'm definitely have this feeling that he will be constant. I will be finding ways to get him unless all signs keep pushing me away from him, because everything keeps I just gravitating to him for a number of reasons. He's a football player. And the other one is Juwan Jennings. I don't know if you know who that is, the wide receiver for Tennessee.
Okay. I don't know who he is.
He's not a highly acclaimed wide receiver, and I think that's why I like him, because I actually think he's one of the best physical. He's like 6'3", 215 pounds. He's built like a premier wide receiver. He's maybe will probably end up being better like a slot, like a big slot, like a Juju. But he reminds me a lot of Juju. Maybe not quite the athlete, but Juju's not that refined. Like he's not the perfect cutter. But he's real smooth. He's strong. He's good after the catch. He's an alpha, and he was a 4-star prospect who just never really kind of came to fruition until this year. So I think a lot of people, because he's a senior, he's not a young player. So a lot of people are just kind of like, oh, he's just, he wasn't good enough to come out as a junior, so he must not be that good. And it's kind of, well, I don't know, watch him play. This is a guy I think could be a number one or end up being a Cooper Kupp type, really efficient. Maybe not Cooper Kupp, because Kupp's so good with the nuances, but definitely like even Juju, just using this body and a lot, depending on the team. I could see a lot for Juwan Jennings and see him coming at a value, a real value. So that's why I pick guys that I know a little bit more about. And I think that right now the sense is that nobody's really talking about him. So to me, as long as that continues, as long as they don't get drafted high, and steal my thunder, then yeah, those would be some of the guys.
Yeah, those are guys I'm definitely gonna have to check out because like I said, I've been just staring at quarterbacks for a while now, and
you're gonna have to give me some quarterback feedback because I got
I
Joe
will.
Burrow and nothing else. I mean, I've
I
looked
mean,
at it like a little bit, but that's it.
Yeah, he's pretty crazy. He's pretty sick, but yeah, I think that's the pretty much the end of this. So if anybody was in the chat, during the live stream, or you're watching a replay on YouTube or listening to the pod, thank you so much. It's truly appreciated. If you are on YouTube, click the bell and subscribe so you know when we go live. If you listen to the podcast, please subscribe, and if you have the opportunity, give us a rating and review. Sonny, I just got a trade offer for Hopkins.
Is that the one or the
a
same
different
year?
one? Oh. James Conner, a 21 first and a 23 first.
Whoa, 23. You gonna be alive in 2023? I don't know if the world.
I mean, I won't be.
It could be robots have already taken everything over by 2023.
Yeah, I'll already be living on my commune then, man. So like, so yeah, I don't think I'm doing that one.
Yeah,
but
that's.
Well, I appreciate it, Sonny. It was a fun talk. I'm glad we got to chat for sure.
I've never done a live podcast before. It's a lot of fun. I had a lot of.
Yeah, maybe we should start another one. What the hell?
Yeah, exactly. I just have to get you on my podcast so I don't have to sit there and talk monologue forever.
Well, that's a deal. I'll do it.
Refreshing thing.
For sure. So thank you so much, and
Bye, Bill.
all right, late.